There's never a dull moment when it comes to Minnesota sports. Whether it's positive or negative.
The Yankees have swept the Twins.
Minnesota Sports Chat has you covered. Talking nothing but Minnesota sports all year long. It's time now for the soon-to-be award-winning, if only in his own mind, Minnesota Sports Chat with your host, Ross Brendel.
Hey, that's me. Welcome inside edition number 232 of the soon-to-be award-winning Minnesota Sports Chat presented by Beans Coffee Company. Been Gopher football heavy in this feed for about the last month. I promise I'll start mixing that up again as my schedule allows. We'll get some more Minnesota sports content in this feed for you aside from Golden Gopher football. But right now, a good time to talk Golden Gopher football. This is the Minnesota Golden Gophers review and preview show. Gophers coming off perhaps their biggest win in a few years by knocking off number 12 USC at home by a final score of 24-17. With that, we welcome in Daniel House from Gophers Guru. Daniel, legitimately good to see your smiling face as we record this pod here on a Tuesday morning, dark and early. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, it's college football season. We love it. Just getting ready for the next game now and trying to put a bow on the USC matchup.
Well, let's start here when we're talking about the Gophers and USC. A couple of highlights for you. I'll play them sequentially in order, courtesy of our friends at the Big Ten Network.
Brosmer keeps it! Minnesota scores! And into your backs. You keep rowing, then you find yourself for 6. Max Brosmer fired up. This crowd is jacked. Moss to the end zone, intercepted. Coy Parrish. And the Gophers beat USC 9 seconds away from doing that.
And how can we leave this out, Daniel House?
Roll the boat, stadium up!
That now rivals this, Daniel, in my mind.
Don't worry, Daniel. I'm keeping the under.
You know, if college football coaching doesn't work out for PJ Fleck, I think he would be a great face or even heel in the WWE. So he may want to keep that in the back of his mind. Again, those highlights courtesy of our friends at the Big Ten Network. A few game notes for you. Gophers trailed 17-10 late in the third quarter. Gophers win the turnover battle 3-1. Another solid day for Max Brosmer. They didn't ask him to do a ton, but when he did it, he was pretty darn efficient. 15 of 19 for 169 yards. No TDs, no picks, but 3 rushing touchdowns, including the game winner, which I could tell from about 140 yards away he made it into the end zone, so I'm not quite positive how officials miss that when they're staring it down the line. But you know what? That's a entirely other conversation. Darius Taylor, 144 yards rushing. Not a ton of sacks for the Gophers defense, Daniel, but a ton of pressure, and the pressure on Miller Moss directly impacted the outcome of the game.
Yeah, I thought it was a really well-executed performance. I liked the defensive game plan quite a bit, and I'm going to be putting a piece up on the site about the coverages they used in that game. A lot of, nickel and dime. They knew that USC loved to run those vertical slot fades, deep balls down the field, trying to stretch you out up the seam. So they said, all right, we're going to play, some invert Tampa 2 type of defense where you've got your corners dropping into the deep half. You got a middle field hole runner who can just kind of roam around and handle the screen game, be able to, just provide coverage resource over the middle of the field without having to drop a middle hole player like a linebacker. So I thought it was a good scheme. It gave the corner space to come down and trigger against any perimeter screens that were available. I thought that, you're going to sacrifice some stuff in the run game, and I think fans kind of saw that you give up some plays occasionally if you aren't good at the point of attack or get out of a run fit and can't get off of the block. Like, you have to be really good in your front seven to be able to do that. Minnesota sacrificed that a little bit, said, hey, USC is not going to beat you with the receivers and the passing game. They're going to beat you, if they want to run the football. And then, Lincoln Riley, it's 17-10, and they're on Minnesota's side of the field. 3rd and 4, throws the ball, Ja bends the corner. They missed a false start before the play was called. Ja was pointing at I think both the tackles actually flinched.
Yep.
But worked out perfectly. Ja turns the corner, knocks the ball up to Devin Williams, and he makes the play. And then from there, it's just, I like the play calling on offense as well. I like the screen passes. That throwback screen was great. They set it up from a little bit of an action they showed earlier in the game. Greg Harbaugh has been doing a really good job of building off designs, not even just from earlier in the year, but as the game goes on. I thought he had Brosmer in a really good spot, and people don't realize how much is actually on Brosmer's plate. Just being able to check into stuff, have a couple of different options based on what the defense is doing. That guy's football IQ is a huge asset to the offense. So that's kind of my general takeaways from the game.
Yeah, and if you listen to the post-game presser, or excuse me, actually the presser that previewed UCLA, Coach Fleck spent a lot of time talking about Max Brosmer's brain and how it operates. And one of those things is that more often than not, Daniel, correct me if I'm wrong, they send him to the line with a couple of different plays, and he's out there trying to figure out which one they can run best and execute best against what they're facing. And that is not the norm for what they have done here at the University of Minnesota. So I think, again, that speaks to the football IQ of the quarterback, who I believe has really settled in these last few weeks. I thought he was probably at his best against Michigan. It was tough to tell how much of that was maybe Michigan letting up a little bit with a big lead, but he was still able to do what was needed to get the Gophers back in that game. Potentially could have won it if they got that onside kick call in their favor. And then I thought he was just fine on Saturday night. Nothing too spectacular, but nothing brutal either. He just did a great job. I don't love using this term, but he managed the game well and did nothing to hurt his team from winning a big game.
Yeah, he's just settled in. And I mean, that's what I felt like everybody was really panicking after the North Carolina game. And I mean, we talked about that scheme is tough. That first game, I mean, both teams are kind of scheming for ghosts. Exotic defense, lots of stuff being thrown at you. First game on a big stage, adjusting to the speed. I feel like he's starting to really get a feel for how fast the game is, how fast the athletes are, what the windows look like for certain throw types. They're fitting the offense around what he does well. A lot of the things that he was doing at New Hampshire, they've been able to incorporate some of that, but also, I just see a lot of influence from NFL concepts in the offense, a lot of Kyle Shanahan, McVay, Kevin O'Connell, that style of offense. And that's something that I think fits his mental ability super well. And I thought Darius Taylor played his best game. He definitely looked pressing the hole. His footwork was good, letting blocks set up, very physical, breaking tackles, seeing the field well. It was by far his best performance. I thought the O-line generated better movement as the game went on, being able to get into the second level. Big shout out to the wideouts and the tight ends in this game. I thought the wideouts were key. There were a couple runs there that maybe would have been 5, 6, 7, 8 yard runs that, spit out for additional yardage because the receivers were doing a really good job on the perimeter. So I thought the execution was much better in a lot of different respects from a detail standpoint.
I want to talk about Coy Parrish here a bit, not just the interception at the end of the game, which was a fantastic athletic play, but also just his play during the entire game. He really stood out from Section 235. Also, when his red shirt was officially ripped off, Daniel, I had mentioned, maybe even on this pod, that I was hopeful we would see him even more on the field to make it worth ripping that red shirt off. And at this point, he's basically a starter on defense. And I think that that's really good to see. And I think it was one of the most impactful reasons as to why they won the game on Saturday night. And that's a really big compliment to give a player who is truly now a true freshman playing in one of the premier conferences in the Big Ten, and to stand out amongst players who most of them on the field are older than him is pretty darn impressive. And I would say so far at this point, he's lived up to the billing. And in all honesty, not knowing a ton about him other than seeing some high school highlights and what people said about him, it's pretty fun to watch him on the field.
Well, and yeah, his role was able to expand a little bit. Kerry Brown went down. Coy gets in, gets a larger role. He's been coming on the field in, scattered capacity, especially within the dime package that they're using. But to see him get more time on the field, I remember going to practices in the fall, and it's like, man, this guy, his speed is just different. You could see that in high school too. Like the suddenness in this guy's game, he's got the instincts from the back end to be able to make, incredible plays. Like, you got to have players like that in the back end that have really good speed and acceleration, can see the field well. You could definitely tell that he is starting to really understand, how defenses are attacking things. And, I think Coy, the really impressive aspect of it is this guy was not an early enrollee. This guy got here in the summer, okay? So think about if this guy was able to be in here in January and get that additional time. And then, he comes in June and he's, trying to get healthy. And then, boom, he's starting the season and getting out there and playing. And for him to be able to do that, I think that's a huge credit to Danny Collins. I think he's an outstanding coach. He's done a great job with multiple safeties in that room. You got Howden, you got Newbin. Now, Coy coming down the pipeline here. Lots of other players that were solid. Danny's done a great job.
So the Gophers beat one team from Southern California at home. They'll depart in just a few days to take on another team from Southern California. We'll get to that in just moments with Daniel House in the more of the preview part of the review and preview edition of Minnesota Sports Chat when it comes to Golden Gophers football. But first, I remind you to thank my friends at Beans Coffee Company for supporting Minnesota Sports Chat. Very easy to thank them. Just go to coffeebybeans.com. I'm not even asking you to buy anything. Just go to coffeebybeans.com. However, I do know once you visit coffeebybeans.com, you'll see something that intrigues you and that you want to try. Truly roasts and blends for all palates. The website, coffeebybeans.com. I'm back to that Perfectus blend. I also love the Mikado. But truth be told, and I'm true when I say this, all the coffee I've had from there is fantastic. Small batch, roasted locally in Mankato, Minnesota. Use the promo code SPORTSCHAT. That's promo code SPORTSCHAT. You'll save some cash at checkout. Also, all orders of $35 or more ship for free at coffeebybeans.com. Promo code SPORTSCHAT. Daniel, let's start with the head coach previewing this matchup with UCLA at the Rose Bowl Saturday, 8 p.m.
Not sure which quarterback's going to play, but they got two quarterbacks that can win games. One's a really good athlete, that is more known for his passing. The other one's a young player that's getting an opportunity as a redshirt sophomore of going out there and doing his thing like he did last week. And he can do it with his feet. He can do it with his arm. He was really accurate, made a ton of plays for him last week. So we got to prepare for both. They got an experienced offensive line with a lot of returning starters. They've got really good skill on the outside. They got possession receivers, guys that can move the sticks. They got guys that can be explosive. They got a deep backfield on the defensive side of the ball. They're deep at a lot of positions. They fly around. They play with incredible effort. They're good up front. They're big up front. Two inside guys are really, really tough and big. And I know they're going to get some guys, some back this week too. So
thanks to Gopher Football on YouTube for that audio. Some other quick notes on UCLA. They're 1-4, their only win of the season back in week 0, I believe, against Hawaii. That may have been actually week 1 by a final score of 16-13. They're averaging just 14 points per game. And for whatever it's worth, Daniel House, do you want to guess what the ESPN matchup predictor says about the Gophers in UCLA this Saturday night?
I'm going to say it gives Minnesota 60%.
Oh, come on. You cheated.
No, I didn't.
60.3% chance to win this game.
Wow.
For the ESPN
Let's go.
matchup predictor. I would say that seems fair, Daniel. I think the Gophers should win, but I can easily see how UCLA would win despite their offensive struggles. The Gophers finally got a really nice win, but there's still been some issues. Not a ton last week against USC, easily their best game of the year. You would hope they carry that momentum over, get to 4-3 and head into the bye week feeling pretty good about themselves. But you truly never know. Your take on what coach said or anything I just laid out right in front of you.
I just think that this matchup, it's more so to me like managing all of the hype that came off this game. I mean, everybody just, going crazy, and now you got to regroup. You got to fly out west. It's your first experience going out west, with the Big Ten team. They did it with Fresno, so they have a little bit of experience when they went to Fresno State. But, this has been a long stretch, Ross. Like, they had no bye week. I believe this is game 7 without any type of break. They get a bye week after this game. But, like, physicality, it just wears on you. So that's what I am mostly watching is, like, how does the team respond? How do they perform with the travel and everything that's gone? Everybody hyping that the game's at the Rose Bowl Stadium, like, just staying dialed in and focused on what they need to do and accomplish. I think UCLA, you look at their defense, teams are really sustaining drives and finishing them. They're staying on schedule. They're wearing them down. They're not giving up a ton of explosives. Teams are just chipping away at them, keeping them on the field. They've faced the 30th most plays in college football thus far. Really low defensive success rates, both against the run and the pass. More so against the pass, they've really struggled. Offensive efficiency, bottom of almost every metric. Not running the ball well, not in good down and distance situations, early down efficiency, second worst success rate on standard downs in college football right now, not able to run the ball. We'll see what happens at quarterback, if it's Ethan Garbers or Justin Martin. I think Garbers, he hasn't been able to take care of the football. I actually thought they were a little bit better last week because they just weren't giving away the football. 18 players out, Ross. 18 players out. 9 were questionable on their availability report. This is a beat-up team. Their offensive line has struggled. They've allowed 65 pressures, which is the most in the Big Ten and the entire Power 5. Like, this is a team that is really struggling, battered and bruised, a brand new head coach, a quarterback situation that you don't know a lot about. It's the UCLA is struggling in many respects right now.
If all goes well, though, this feels like a game that plays into the Gophers schematically, who are going to want to continue to run the football, eat some clock. Obviously, that they'd love to work in some pass plays as well. We all know that, but they love to run the football. They love to dominate the line of scrimmage. And the defense, by and large, for most of the year, Daniel, has held up. So this actually, to me, if the Gophers handle their business, feels like a game that they should win. I think pretty much everybody believes that, but it also does for some of the cases that you laid out. Kind of feels like a game you just want to survive and get the win no matter how you can.
Well, yeah, it's just circumstances. I mean, like I say, 7 games and then, you get a bye week. Their bye week, it wasn't real great. Like the bye schedule for Minnesota, they get 2 byes this year. They get 1 here and then they get 1 in November again. Like you'd rather have that bye come like maybe, toward the end of September, being like now you got to play another game and then, you're getting it on the 19th of October, I believe. That's tough. It's tough on everybody. It's tough on the coaches. It's tough on the players. Like, it's just a mental grind. And then you can kind of reset for that last half of the season. And then it's just like the emotional high. Like, I know I really want to do this sometime across sports after like emotional wins. What is the record of the team that won the emotional game? Because I tell you what, I feel like there are always some sort of emotional letdown, like after those big, big thrills. And I'm not saying the Gophers are going to have that happen, but it's just something that I've found over the years that, like, you got to take that into account and, like, really focus on it if you're coaches that, like, hey, you got to dial in here. You got to focus on the task at hand.
Yeah, and if you have that slow start, can you end up recovering in the game and still end up with a victory versus never being able to recover? Oftentimes, you will see a bit of that hangover effect, Daniel. See it a lot in the SEC, but it seems to be right after halftime, those teams that are maybe suffering that bit of a hangover effect, if you will, tend to clean it up a little bit. So definitely something to monitor. I think the Gophers are going to win, Daniel, but I'm also I'm also on guard. You just truly never know what's going to happen. We saw it last week multiple times across the country, any given Saturday in college football. And in college, it's never easy when a team goes on the road. But I do like now that the Gophers at least did have that experience of playing a really big road game against a decent to above average Michigan team on the road. So hopefully that pays some dividends when they head into the Rose Bowl. Other action,
I just think this game, Minnesota is going to control the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. And that's kind of my impression of it. I think that's what will happen. Minnesota will just wear them down and really get after it up front on both sides.
Well, and Daniel, you get to 4-3, you head into the bye, you get Maryland out of the bye. It's not out of the question. There's ways to get to a bowl game at 5-7. We saw it last year. In fact, for the Gophers, I don't want to say it's likely, but there's actually a pretty good chance thanks to APR and what other eligible teams. James Madison will qualify for a bowl game. They're technically on probation, but if there's a spot, they'll get one. Jacksonville State will have a chance to do that, although right now they're under 500. So there is a path for the Gophers at 5-7. But if you beat UCLA, it now becomes not out of the possibility that you will legitimately get to your 6 wins and qualify for a bowl game and who knows more. So that's at least in the short term what that USC win does for you. It makes you feel slightly better about yourself, and now you can see a path to winning a few more games. Quick look around the Big Ten. Northwestern takes on Maryland. That is at Maryland. Washington is at Iowa. Wisconsin at Rutgers. Penn State at USC. Purdue at Illinois. Minnesota at UCLA, as we mentioned. And the big one, number 2, Ohio State at number 3, Oregon on Saturday night on NBC at 6:30. Daniel, that game's going to be a treat, I think. That's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm actually intrigued by Wisconsin Rutgers. This is an interesting game to me. You look at Rutgers, that game last week versus Nebraska, second half, held Nebraska to 1.9 yards per play. Over the course of the game, blocked 2 punts, sacked Raiola 4 times, and still ended up losing that game. I couldn't believe it. I think that, the big thing is they got to start finishing some drives, Rutgers. 9 scoring opportunities. So that means crossing the opponent's 40-yard line. They only scored 7 points. And, you block that punt, you get down to the 2 and you don't score. That's incredible. I think Rutgers can run the ball on Wisconsin. Wisconsin's run defense has given me some concerns. I thought the Purdue game, they started pretty slow. I'm interested to see, can Wisconsin execute the details? It's drop ball here, bad ball there, interception, fumble. They had some penalties that kind of bailed them out against Purdue. You're going to have to play a detail-oriented game on the road at Rutgers. I'm interested in that game. I think it should be pretty evenly matched and entertaining.
How? Wrong one.
Don't worry, Daniel. I'm keeping the under.
I'll leave you with this, Daniel. For whatever it's worth, the ESPN matchup predictor says Rutgers, 60.8%.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you got that one, and then you got Oregon, Ohio State. Doesn't get any better than that, man. I tell you what. Great matchup.
Well, let's poke some more fun at it. You want to guess what the ESPN matchup predictor says for Oregon,
Ohio State? I'm going to say Ohio State, 55%.
63.9% for Ohio State.
Okay.
We should start monitoring this thing a bit more to see how actually accurate it is. I don't
know. There's got to be a way to do it. I don't know if it's based on their FPI or what, but we'll work on that.
Maybe I'll work on getting a guest where we can just grill the person who works on the matchup predictor. I'll work on that for us.
See if you can contact somebody.
Very quickly, what's at gophersguru.com or what will be there?
You'll have a big breakdown on the defense. I'm excited about this one. Maybe one of my favorite ones I've done, talking about what they were able to do schematically that gave USC some trouble. Preview of UCLA coming along, and then insight tomorrow on the social media feed from the coordinators and players. So keep an eye out for that.
Love it. GophersGuru.com is the website, at Daniel House MN on the X machine. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks. A lot of fun.
That's Daniel House. I am Ross Brendel at the Ross Brendel on the X machine. This has been Minnesota Sports Chat. Please make sure you rate and review on Apple and Spotify, like, comment, and subscribe on the YouTube machine.
Thanks for listening to Minnesota Sports Chat, presented by Beans Coffee Company. Use the promo code SPORTSCHAT. That's one word, Sports Chat, to save at checkout. Follow Ross on X at the Ross Brendel. Like and subscribe to Minnesota Sports Chat wherever you get your podcasts. Rate and review kindly.